How to build a Blackgates Sweet Pea 5-inch gauge locomotive, part 49, using a whetstone to clean up the faces of the slide valves, plus starting the job of making the covers for the Steam Chest Glands. These are the slide valves sat on the bench, and both of them need considerable attention to the part that you can't see, the main faces of the valves. I bought this thing a while ago. It's a sharpening stone, also known as a whetstone, with the letter H in front of the first E. It's a general-purpose grinding stone, ideal for sharpening knives. To make it work properly, though, it does need a lubricant, and this is WD-40, which is not ideal, but it will do for starters. Years ago, I always found it a strange anomaly that you use oil on something that grinds and cuts, because oil makes things slippery. The point of the lubrication, just like with wet or dry sandpaper, when you can use water or oil, is it keeps the face of the cutting surface clean. Without the lubricant, the metal picks up onto the sandpaper, or in this case the whetstone, and it doesn't cut quite so well. You can either use this stone sat inside the actual plastic case or on top of it, but it moves about and it's very annoying, so I put the piece of paper back in that it came wrapped in, and it's much better. The whetstone now stays more or less in one place and doesn't slide about. This video is heavily edited. It took a lot longer to clean up the front part of these valves to a good standard. There definitely needs to be a good seal between the slide valves and the port faces. Otherwise the steam in the steam chest will not go where you want it to go. This is looking good now. It's almost a perfect finish. I started off this sequence by using the whetstone on both of the valves at the same time, but in the end I found it better to do them separately. These whetstones are surprisingly good for jobs like this. Every workshop should have one. I used a whetstone for many years that was my father's, but unfortunately one day it fell on the floor and it didn't work when it was in several pieces. In reality, it's taken quite a few years for me to buy another one. I saw one in my friend Andrew's workshop and thought, note to self, buy a whetstone, so I did, and here it is. After a while, especially if you're using WD-40, the surface of the stone dries out, so you need to replenish it, using some more lubricant. I have an aerosol can of 3-in-1 oil. I looked on the bench for a while and couldn't see it. It just seems to be a bit more slippery than WD-40 and doesn't evaporate quite as quickly. Here's the face on valve number 2, and it's very much near perfection. Far better than it was before I started. The marking out scratches on these valve faces was very deep, but they're not there anymore, and I can pass both of these valves as 100% fit for service. It's important to keep the whetstone clean, so before putting it away, wipe the surface to get rid of all the metal particles. Now it's time to move on to the main job in this episode, starting to make the gland covers for the steam chests, because there weren't any with the engine when I bought it. The engineering standard on this engine really is not very good. I'm going to try and improve it slightly, but rest assured by the time I've finished it, it should run quite well. Personally, I am not a good engineer, but I'm very tenacious and I seldom give in. And I try at all costs not to bodge a job. Everything that I make is to the best of my ability, and it's very important to me that all the parts I make are fully serviceable. On screen at the moment is one of the steam chests. The hole for the steam inlet pipe is in the wrong place, but I have a workaround for that problem. I'll show it in a future episode. There's a lot to do before I get to that part. Once upon a time I used to have an ink pad, but it got very oily and went wrong, but I still have some of the ink. I threw the ink pad away ages ago, and here I've applied some ink to a cloth. You may be wondering why I've done this. The plan is to duplicate the existing holes in the steam chest on the gland cover. And now it's top tip time. When using ink to make an impression of a part on another part, you may find that the second attempt is better than the first. The first one had too much ink and it just blobbed and I can't really see where the holes are. But the second one showed me clearly where the holes are. The first problem is obvious. The holes on the steam chest gland are not in the middle. The next part of this description is very unorthodox. I'm using my Proxon motor tool to drill holes on the marks on the inked impression on the piece of wood. Here's a repeat of the first clip showing the impression on the piece of wood. Even before I took the impression, I could see that the holes on the steam chest were in the wrong place anyway. So when I drilled the piece of wood, I modified the hole position so they are in the right place now. I could have used a piece of paper for this job, but the mahogany is more durable. Here I'm trying the template in position over the holes, and it's quite close, but not close enough for my liking. Have a look at this. You can see what I mean in this close-up view of the end of the gland. The holes are nowhere near, they're all over the place. You can see the problem more clearly in this magnified image. And I've just noticed that the holes are not threaded. I think the idea is going to be thread the holes, plug them, then using my pattern on the piece of mahogany, drill some holes in a piece of phosphor bronze bar in the correct place. With a piece of 5/8 diameter leaded bronze in the chuck, I'm going to make the gland covers using this. How do I know it's 5/8? Is it my calibrated eye? No, as you can see it says 5/8 on the piece of metal. The first job is to face across the front of the piece of bar to make sure it's square in the chuck before I drill it. And here I'm taking a very tiny amount off the piece of bar just to clean up the outside. I was going to follow the gland cover design as shown in the book, and here I'm reducing the diameter for a certain length. As I was machining the bar, I thought, no, this is silly. I never did like the design of sweet pea glands. So I quickly stopped the turning operation and turned the piece of bar around in the chuck. Once again I faced across the front and then took a very small cut down the length of the bar, and after doing that I centre drilled the end. And what I'm currently doing is centre drilling the end slightly deeper, and the reason for this will become apparent in the next episode. In this clip I'm drilling a hole down the centre of the bar, or at least the part of the bar that's been turned, and I'm drilling it 1 imperial size under 3/16 of an inch, because then I'm going to use a reamer to obtain an accurately sized and smooth bore finish. That is it for this episode. I'll be doing all the fiddly parts and getting it right hopefully in the next episode. Stay safe, stay healthy, thanks for watching, and I hope you found it useful. Please take the time to visit my main Steam Models website and click on the section of the website that says Video Playlists. And by doing that, you can find other videos that you may like to watch. And by using the playlists, you can actually watch the videos back to back.